YouTube, it's Charlie from Reader Turned Writer, and today I just wanted to do my reading wrap-up and share some bookish stats with you. I haven't done a monthly wrap-up for a few months. It's been kind of crazy and life has just been, way crazy, and so now we're finally kind of getting back into a groove and a routine and getting our habits back and finding systems to help with some of the crazier aspects of life, like kids drawing on the walls. We have a real problem with that right now that we're really trying to stop because it's driving us crazy. Anyway, I am excited to share the books that I read with you. I read 16 books, so I'm going to jump right in, and so it's not too long. The first book I read was The Off-Limits Rule by Sarah Adams, and I rated this 5 stars. This is an adult rom-com. It's a closed-door romance, so it's very clean and uplifting, and it's hilarious. I love Sarah Adams' humor and her writing style. I have read a few rom-coms by her now. She's kind of pumping them out, and I'm really loving that. Every time she comes out with one, I'm always really excited. And I will link her Instagram down below. That is where I originally found her, was on Instagram, and she writes really great romances. For the Agatha Christie challenge that I'm doing, the prompt was to read something with a love story in it or something, and then they give you a list of books that by Agatha Christie that did have a romance in it, and Sad Cypress was one of them, and I hadn't read it, and so I decided to read this one, and it was really good. It's not my favorite by Agatha Christie. It has a little bit of a different kind of format than some of the books that I read before. It like starts off kind of showing the lady who is found guilty like in the murder trial, or being tried for the murder, and then it shows the crime and how it happened, and then Poirot comes in to figure out the case, and it was definitely really interesting. And even though it wasn't like my absolute favorite, it was definitely a really good Agatha Christie book to read. It has that Agatha Christie feel of like a murder mystery, and Poirot is always one of my favorites to read by her. So, and I rated it 5 stars. I'm not sure if I said that before. And then I reread How to Talk So Kids Will Learn by Adele Faber, and I just really like Adele Faber's parenting books. I love the way that they talk about parenting and giving you tools and just the mindset that you can have while parenting. And I've been trying to read a little bit out of a parenting book every single morning after I read my scriptures to try and help me to be a better mom, because sometimes I lose my temper with my kids, right? Like they just get so frustrating, and I am learning how to see them in a better way, and I'm learning to calm myself down so I can be an example to them for when they're upset. And I really love that habit of reading, and that's how I finished that one. Is I just was reading a little bit every morning and ended up finishing it. And then I read Acting in Love by Marty, and I rated this 4 stars. It was a really cute, clean romance. It was one of those, fake relationships that turns into like we actually like each other relationships. My one thing with the book is I wish there was more, especially in the middle. I would have loved to see more in their fake relationship. I really wanted more from the story, which I think is a really good thing because it means I really liked the book. The writing craft book I read this month was this short little one. I didn't know how short it was when I decided to pick it up, but someone recommended it to me on my channel in one of the videos when I was doing a review of writing craft books. So I rated this 3 stars. It's Write Your Novel from the Middle, and it was the idea is good. The idea that prompted the book, the stuff he talks about the middle of the book was really interesting and useful to me, but that's basically all. And I'm going to do a review of this on its own later, but I basically felt like the main idea of the book could have been just a blog post, and that it didn't warrant a book, and then he padded it with other things to try and make it big enough to be a book, and then even still it's really short. But because it's such a short book, then it might still be worth it to read it to get the information about the middle of your book and why it's so important and different things like that. So I listened to Tweet Cute by Emma Lord on Audible, and it was a fantastic audiobook, and I rated it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I can see what all the hype is about. There were some things that lessened the enjoyment of it for me, mainly the parents. The parents drove me crazy, of both of them, of both the love interests, but it wasn't like the book wasn't good or not well done or anything. It just bothered me personally. But I really loved the You've Got Mail vibes. I loved pretty much everything about the book except for the parents, but it was a really cute book and highly recommend it. I mean, everybody does. It's all over BookTube. I also reread Emma last month as part of my Jane Austen marathon, and I finished reading or watching the 4 adaptations that I wanted to of it and really enjoyed that as well. And I will be doing a whole wrap up talking about that in my next one. But I do like Emma. I can see why people don't, because Emma can be annoying, but I actually really love Emma. I love the characters and how just unique they all are from each other, and just how Jane Austen portrays them. And I also just love the misunderstandings. It's really funny to me, and seeing it all come together is really satisfying. My husband and I have started reading the Princess in Black books to my kids at night, because we found that reading about one or 2 chapters, depending on how long they are, is a really good length for the kids, and all 3 kids really like it. So we ended up reading Princess in Black Takes a Vacation and The Princess in Black and a Mysterious Playdate. And it was just the next in the series, and both of them I rated 5 stars. I am really liking the Princess in Black series. It's interesting to me, and my kids love them, and I think that's just a win-win. Then I reread Lady of Milkweed Manor by Julie Clathclassin, and I rated it 5 stars. I read this when I was pregnant with my second, Parker, and I really liked it, and as I reread it, I still really liked it. It's kind of like a Regency romance, only the romance is kind of secondary. The main plotline has to do with motherhood and nursing. Basically, a lady gets pregnant out of wedlock and goes away to give birth, and then she becomes a wet nurse. And I love nursing, and I love motherhood, and I love just giving birth. Like, I love all of that stuff, and so reading about it is really interesting. I know some of the reviews thought that they talked about nursing too much or too explicitly, I guess, like they were bothered by it. I wasn't. Nursing to me is very much like a natural thing in life. I mean, but I am a mother, and I have had, I had 3 kids in 4 years, and we're planning on having more, and so my cousins and in-laws and everything, they're all having kids too, and we're really close, so we talk about things like nursing very openly, and so it didn't feel weird to me. But I could see why, if you're not a mother, I can see why it would feel weird. If you are, I guess I don't really understand, because maybe we're just different in that way, or maybe if you didn't nurse, it might not be quite as interesting. But to me, nursing is something that is really tender, and I just related a lot with a lot of the things that were discussed, and yeah, I really like it. I also do like the romance. There is the romance there, even though it's not like the main plot. It's definitely a prominent part of the plot all throughout the book, and I think the romance is good. And then I read Just One Kiss by Courtney Walsh, and I rated this 3 stars. This is just kind of one that I found off of Instagram, and it was an adult romance. I did enjoy it. It was one of those like, oh, this old romance didn't work, let's try and make it work romances. And it honestly, it felt like it was kind of drawn out in miscommunication. Like, if they had just sat down and talked to each other, then everything would have been fine, but then they don't. And that's a trope that's really hard for me to have patience with throughout a romance novel. And so that's why I rated it 3 stars, because it's not personally my favorite, but it was a cute romance, and I know that there are other novels in this universe before, and so maybe if I had read those and I'd liked these characters more, I would have enjoyed it more. I also listened to Belgravia on Audible by Julian Fellows, and the audiobook was really well done for this as well, and I rated this 5 stars. I did really enjoy it. At the beginning, I wasn't 100% sure that I would end up liking it, but by the end I was totally sold on it. It is not Downton Abbey, but it's still really good and really fun to read. And I just really liked the way everything played out in the end. The ending was really satisfying for me. Another Sarah Adams book I read this month was To Catch a Suitor, and I rated it 4 stars. I really like Sarah Adams, like I said. She started off with Regency romances, and I had read all of them except for this one, and so I wanted to read this one to kind of catch up with her books so now the only books I won't have read are books that she comes out with on new release. And it's a cute Regency romance. I do prefer her rom-coms to her Regencies, but her Regencies do have really fun characters still. I feel like one of her biggest strengths is just how much I love her characters, especially her female characters that are the main protagonists. They're always so funny and relatable to me, and I always end up just falling in love with them. The reason I knocked down a star is because this one kind of had the same thing, where it was if they just sat down and had a conversation, then the book would have been way shorter. And I just don't like that trope as much. I also listened on Audible to A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer to finish off the trilogy. I really enjoyed the audiobook, and I did enjoy the book. I rated it 4 stars. I felt like it was a solid ending to the trilogy, and that the trilogy as a whole is fairly solid. In the second book, there were some choices that the characters made that I just didn't agree with, that just really bothered me, and I think they bothered a lot of people. And in the second book, there was really good character growth from that, which I really enjoyed. But those choices still, and the justification for those choices, some of it was, I was just like, no. And then there were some loose ends that weren't tied up to my satisfaction at the very end of the book. If she's going to write more, that might be why, but I'm not sure if she is going to write more in this world or not, since this is technically the end of the trilogy. But she could do spin-off things that would help wrap up some of those loose ends. But as of right now, it's 4 stars for those 2 reasons. Another book that I read from someone that I found on YouTube is Sarah Sutton, and I'll link her channel down below. I read Can't Catch My Breath. I think it's her newest release, and I rated it 4 stars. I thought it was really well done, a really cute romance, but also delves into deeper issues with handling grief and overcoming those really strong feelings and kind of going through that grieving process. And I thought that it was beautifully done, that section. It's a romance I would highly recommend. And then the final book that I read was a read aloud with my kids. We read Pippi Longstocking, and I rated it 3 stars. My 6-year-old would rate it 5 stars. My 6-year-old, my 4-year-old, they both loved Pippi Longstocking. They thought that she was hilarious and funny, and she is, and she's silly, and you know, they loved how silly she was and the silly stuff that she would do. And their favorite chapter was the burglars, because they just knew that Pippi was gonna pick him up at some point, and they were just so excited for that. My biggest issue with it is it just got kind of boring. There's no overarching plot, and even the little stories, because each chapter is basically like a new little short story about Pippi, and even each chapter didn't seem to have its own plot a lot of the time, or the plot was just really simple, like, oh, Pippi's gonna go to the circus and be silly and bother the person in charge of the circus because she's in the circus, you know. And that's the whole plot of the chapter, which of course the kids loved, but for me I need a little bit more than that. And so that was why I rated it lower, even though I think it is a really great book for kids, and I'm really glad that I read it aloud with them. I've never read it before, and so it was a way that I could read it while getting some enjoyment out of it because of how much my kids enjoyed it. I am curious about the movie. I know there's 2 movies, like there's an older one and then there's a newer one. Have you seen them? Are they worth watching? I'm a little bit cautious after reading some of the reviews on Amazon, but reviews on Amazon can be so hit and miss. So I would love to hear from you if you enjoy the Pippi Longstocking movies, if it's worth showing them to my kids after they loved Pippi so much. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in February. It was a good month for me. I was able to read a lot of romance, which was kind of my goal with Valentine's Day, and just things were crazy, so I wanted to have some easier reads, and it was really fun to read that many romances. I would love to hear what you read in February or what your favorite book of the month was. Mine was probably The Off-Limits Rule. I had a lot of fun with that one. Oh, I did want to share some of my stats, so I'll open that up on my bullet journal real fast so I can just read them off to you. Oh, here are my favorite books. The Off-Limits Rule, Tweet Q, and Belgravia. Those were my 3 favorites. So I read 14 books by female authors and 2 books by male authors. I have not read very many books by male authors this year so far. I don't know why. Normally it's almost 50-50 for me. Like, usually I do read more female, but it's closer to 50-50, and this year it's like almost all female. I did read 3 new releases. I had 8 5-star reads, 5 4-star reads, 3 3-star reads, and no 0 or 2-star reads. I read 3 middle grade, 3 YA, and 10 adult books, and 3 read alouds. I had 3 books from the library. I owned 3 of the books that I read. I had 7 ebooks that I read, and I listened to 2 audiobooks. One of the audiobooks that I listened to, I counted as a library book because it was an audiobook from the library. I had 3 rereads and 13 new reads. I bought 5 books, 7 ebooks, 3 audiobooks, and I unhauled 1 book. I read 5 books that were part of a series. I finished 2 series and I started 1 series. Of my TBR list that I had, I read 13 of the 16 books that I had on my TBR list for February, and I read 3 books from my 2021 TBR list, which is exactly spot on. If I read 3 each month, then I will have read 36 by the end of the year. Oh, and I read 16 books for a total of 4,442 pages, and that's an average of 278 pages per book. At the beginning of the month, I had 18 ebooks, and I read 6 of them. I didn't DNF any of them, so then at the end of the month I had 12 unread books, but then I bought 2, so now I have 14 ebooks that I haven't read. I started off the month with 15 books that I owned that I hadn't read yet, and I read 4 of those. I didn't DNF any of them, and so then I ended up with 11 unread on my page. And I bought 1, so now I have 12 books that I own that I haven't read yet. And then I had 10 audiobooks at the beginning of the month that I hadn't listened to yet, and I read 2 of them. I didn't DNF any, and that means I had 8 at the end, and I ended up buying 1, so now I have 9. With Instagram and YouTube, I started off the month with, in January I had 407 subscribers, and in February I have 426, so I did gain quite a few subscribers, so that was fun. And on Instagram I had 297 followers in January, and now I have 305, so I am slowly growing in both places, which is always nice. And YouTube, I posted 9 videos. 7 of them were booktube-ish videos because I was trying to do finish up my end of the year bookish videos that I was sharing all the books I read, and 2 of them were AuthorTube videos. And then I posted 16 Instagram pictures. 4 of them were quotes, 2 of them were personal posts that were more like, oh, this is just for fun. 6 of them were about reading, and 4 of them were about writing. And I wrote 3,726 books, and I also edited some on Rapunzel. So yeah, those are kind of my stats. I may have missed some because I was just trying to find them in my bullet journal. I have a stats page, but then I keep track of different stats in different areas for some of them. So I'm gonna get off now, but thank you so much for watching my video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for lots of bookish content, and I will see you in my next video.